The cake smelled like vanilla and burnt sugar. I could hear my coworkers laughing through the conference room door, glasses clinking, someone giving a toast. I was standing in the hallway outside, holding a manila envelope I'd carried for 3 weeks and never planned to use, until my manager looked me in the eye and gave my promotion to my sister. Let me back up. My name is Claire. I'm 31 years old, and for the last 6 years, I have worked at Mercer & Hollis, a mid-size marketing firm in Columbus, Ohio. I started as a junior copywriter straight out of college. I stayed late. I learned the accounts. I said yes when no one else wanted the unglamorous projects, the healthcare clients, the dry regulatory rewrites, the accounts that paid steady but never won awards. I did it because I believed in something my mother used to say when I was a little girl. Do good work, and good work will find you. My mother believed that. I believed that. My sister Danielle believed in something else entirely. Danielle is 28. She joined Mercer & Hollis 14 months ago, after I recommended her for an open associate position. I put my name behind hers. I told my manager, Richard, that she was sharp and eager and just needed a chance. I believed that too. I was her older sister. I had spent most of my life believing in Danielle, even when she made it difficult. Growing up, I was what our parents called the responsible one, which sounds like a compliment until you're 15 and realize it's actually just a job description with no pay and no recognition. Danielle was the funny one, the magnetic one, the one who walked into a room and made people glad she arrived. I was the one who made sure the room was clean before she got there. Our parents weren't cruel. I want to be clear about that. They loved us both. But there's a specific kind of quiet favoritism that doesn't announce itself, it just accumulates over years in small moments. Danielle's chorus recitals got a standing ovation from both parents. Mine got my father still in his work clothes, arriving at the second half. Danielle's college application essays were proofread by our mother at the kitchen table. Warm tea on both sides. I wrote mine alone in my room and checked them myself. None of it was malicious. That's the part that's hardest to explain to people who haven't lived it. When cruelty has a face, you can confront it. When it's just a pattern, a series of small overlooked moments, you learn to talk yourself out of what you're seeing. I got good at that, talking myself out of it. So when Danielle applied at my firm, I told myself it would be different. We were adults now. We were colleagues. This was a professional environment, and I was the established one here. 6 years of relationships, 6 years of results. Whatever our childhood dynamic had been, this was neutral ground. I genuinely believed that. For the first few months, it seemed like I was right. Danielle worked hard. She asked good questions. She shadowed me on 2 accounts, and I taught her everything I knew: how Richard liked his briefs formatted, which clients needed hand-holding, which ones needed space. I gave her my playbook freely, because that's what you do for family. That's what I did for everyone who asked. What I didn't know, not then, was that Danielle had also learned something I hadn't. She'd learned how to make the work look like hers. It started small, a phrase I'd coined in a brainstorm showing up in her presentation, a strategic angle I'd suggested in passing, packaged as her original thinking in a client email. I noticed. I filed it away. I told myself it was collaboration. I told myself I was being too sensitive. I told myself the same things I'd been telling myself since we were kids. Then the Morrison account opened up. Morrison Industrial was the kind of account that changed careers. Long-term, high budget, high visibility. Richard had been managing it personally for 2 years, and he'd finally decided to hand it off to a senior associate. Everyone in the office knew what landing Morrison meant. It meant the corner office track. It meant your name on the agency roster in a different font. I had been preparing for this without fully admitting I was preparing. I had 6 years of institutional knowledge, a relationship with 2 of Morrison's regional contacts, and a campaign concept I'd been quietly developing for months. I hadn't told anyone about the concept, not even Danielle, or so I thought. The review process was a standard internal pitch. Each candidate would present to Richard and the 2 partners in a closed meeting. Danielle and I were both in the running, along with 2 senior associates from other teams. I wasn't worried about them. I was only slightly worried about Danielle, and then I felt guilty for being worried about my own sister. The night before my presentation, I stayed late to finalize my deck. Danielle had left at 5. She'd mentioned she was having dinner with her boyfriend and would prep in the morning. I remember thinking, with no small amount of relief, that she wasn't taking this as seriously as I was. She was just better at hiding how seriously she was taking it. I found out 2 days later. Richard called me into his office on a Thursday afternoon and asked me to close the door. He had a look on his face I'd seen before, the carefully arranged expression of a man delivering news he'd already made peace with. He thanked me for my pitch. He said it was strong. He said the concept was innovative, and my relationship with the Morrison contacts was genuinely valuable. Then he gave the account to Danielle. He said she'd brought something fresh. He said the partners felt her energy was a better fit for where Morrison wanted to go. He said this with the warmth of someone who believed he was being kind, and I sat across from him and nodded slowly and said I understood. Because what else do you do in that moment? You don't fall apart in your manager's office. You don't ask the question that's screaming in your chest. I asked the question later. Outside in the parking lot, on the phone with my best friend, Rachel. She'd heard me talk about Morrison for months. She'd heard me talk about Danielle for years. Did she steal your concept? Rachel asked. She asked it the way you ask a question you already know the answer to. I said I didn't know. I was lying. Not to Rachel. To myself. I went back inside and I did what I always did. I sat down at my desk and I worked. The Morrison decision was announced company-wide the next morning. I sent Danielle a congratulations message over Teams. Professional, warm, 3 sentences. She responded with a heart emoji and couldn't have done it without everything you've taught me. I stared at that message for a long time. That evening, I was cleaning out a shared drive folder one Danielle and I had both used during a project earlier in the year when I found a file with a date stamp that didn't make sense. It was a document titled Morrison Strategy Framework V2. The date was 3 days before her internal pitch. The contents were my concept, restructured, reworded, but structurally identical in a way that goes beyond coincidence. The same 3-phase rollout, the same regional differentiation model, the same exact language around legacy client trust that I had coined, that I had written in my personal notes and never shared anywhere. Except I had shared my screen once. Just once. Danielle had been in my office, asking a question about a different project, and I'd had my notes open for maybe 5 minutes. 5 minutes was enough. I sat very still. I had the document on my screen and I didn't move for a long time. There's a specific feeling you get when something you half suspected becomes something you can't unknow. It isn't just anger, it's grief. Because you didn't just lose a promotion, you lost the version of your sister you'd chosen to believe in. I printed the document. I also printed the original version from my personal files, the one with my metadata embedded in the file history, the one dated 3 weeks before hers. I put them both in a manila envelope, and I carried that envelope to work every day for 3 weeks and didn't do anything with it. Because I wasn't sure what I wanted. I knew what I had. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. The answer arrived when Richard announced the Morrison celebration party. It was a company-wide event catered, held in the main conference room on a Friday afternoon, a genuine milestone for the firm. Danielle had already started work on the account, and Richard wanted to mark the occasion. I thought it was fine. I prepared to attend like a professional, congratulate my sister in public, eat some catered food, and go home. That morning, I arrived at the office to find my name was not on the room setup list. The party was department-wide, but seating had been arranged for the Morrison team, the core group who would be working the account. My name was not on the list because I was not on the team, and apparently that meant I was not fully welcome at the celebration either. I would be welcome to stop by, Richard's assistant told me, but there wasn't a seat reserved for me. There wasn't a seat for the person who had built the concept that launched this account. Evento Medesk. I opened my email. I had 4 messages from clients, 1 from the dry cleaners, and 1 from Danielle with the subject line, "So excited! Come celebrate with us." I looked at the manila envelope in my desk drawer. I thought about 6 years. I thought about the Morrison contacts I'd cultivated, the relationship I'd built, the campaign that was now going to run under my sister's name. I thought about my mother's kitchen table, proofread essays, chorus recitals. I thought about every moment I had talked myself out of what I was seeing. I picked up the envelope. I took my coffee. And I walked down to the conference room, not to stay, but to make one stop first. Richard was already inside, talking with the partners near the window. Danielle was across the room, holding a glass of something sparkling, wearing the green dress she always saved for important days. She saw me come in and she smiled wide and easy and completely unguarded. The smile of someone who doesn't think they've done anything wrong. That smile told me everything I still needed to know. I crossed the room. I set the envelope on the presentation table, the one with the Morrison materials, where the partners would see it when the formal part of the afternoon began. I had written one thing on the outside of the envelope in black marker. For Richard and the partners Morrison Strategy Origins. Please review before the campaign launches. And then I turned around, walked back through the conference room door, past the catered trays of food I'd never eaten, down the hall, into the elevator, through the lobby, and out into the November afternoon. The air outside smelled like cold rain and concrete. My hands were steady. I had expected my heart to be hammering, but it wasn't. I felt something quieter than I anticipated. Not triumph, not even relief exactly. Just the particular stillness of a person who has finally stopped carrying something they were never supposed to carry alone. I drove to Rachel's apartment. I didn't text Danielle. I didn't text Richard. I ordered Thai food, and I sat on Rachel's couch, and I watched a documentary about deep-sea fish, creatures that spend their whole lives in the dark and still manage to make their own light. Richard called at 4:47 p.m. I let it go to voicemail. He called again at 5:02. I watched my phone light up and go dark and then light up again. At 5:15, I answered. He didn't open with pleasantries. He asked if I had left the envelope. I said yes. He was quiet for a moment, not an uncomfortable quiet, more like a man recalibrating, rearranging something in his understanding of recent events. He asked if I had the original files to support what was in the envelope. I said yes, with full metadata and version history. He asked if I could come in Monday morning at 8, before the rest of the office arrived. I said yes to that too. I found out later from Marcus in the IT department, who had been present, that the mood in the conference room had shifted significantly after the envelope was opened. Apparently, the partners had gone quiet. Apparently, Danielle had been asked to explain herself. Apparently, the celebration had concluded early. I wasn't there for any of it. I had chosen not to be. Monday morning, Richard's office. 8 a.m., gray winter light through the window, 2 of the partners seated along the wall. I brought my original files on a USB drive. I brought printed versions with timestamps. I brought the shared drive document with Danielle's metadata, and I brought an export from my personal cloud backup showing the original file created 3 months before Danielle's version. I did not bring anger. I had left that in the parking lot 3 weeks ago. I came with facts, and I let the facts do what facts are meant to do. The conversation lasted 45 minutes. I was professional. I was clear. When one of the partners, a woman named Sandra who had always been fair-minded, asked me why I hadn't come forward sooner, I told her the truth. I'd needed to be sure. I'd needed to understand the full picture before I said something I couldn't take back. I had not wanted to be the person who weaponizes an accusation. I had wanted to be the person who simply told the truth when the truth was clear. Sandra nodded slowly. She wrote something down. I was assigned to the Morrison account 2 weeks later. Not instead of Danielle, there was a reorganization of the team structure, a quiet one, with no formal announcement. Danielle remained in her role, but her involvement with Morrison was significantly reduced. There was no public confrontation, no dramatic meeting where anyone was called out by name. Just a series of quiet structural changes that told me, without anyone saying so directly, that what I'd brought to Richard had been believed. Danielle called me that Sunday. She said she wanted to explain. She said she hadn't meant for it to go that far. She said she'd only borrowed the framework as a starting point and thought she'd made it different enough. She said she was sorry, with the specific cadence of someone who is sorry they were caught, which is not quite the same as sorry for what they did. I listened to all of it. I didn't interrupt. When she finished, I said, "I know." That was all. Because that's the thing about finally seeing clearly. It doesn't always require a lot of words. I had spent my whole life adding words, adding explanations, adding the benefit of the doubt to every space where doubt didn't deserve the benefit. For once, I wanted to say exactly as much as the moment required. And the moment required 2 words. We have spoken since then. We are not estranged. The holidays happened. Family dinners happened, phone calls happened, but something shifted, or maybe more accurately, something stopped pretending it hadn't shifted. We are sisters. That doesn't stop being true. But I stopped being the one who maintained the illusion that everything was fine, and Danielle had to reckon for the first time with what her choices actually cost. I think that reckoning was harder for her than she expected. I think it was necessary. I stayed at Mercer and Hollis for 8 more months, long enough to see the Morrison campaign launch, to see my strategic framework execute the way I knew it would, to see the regional results come back stronger than projected, long enough to receive a formal review that described my work in terms I'd waited 6 years to hear in print. Then I took a call from a recruiter, and 6 weeks later I accepted a senior strategist position at a firm in Chicago. My last day in Columbus, I packed up my desk and carried 1 box to my car. Just one. I'd never been someone who accumulated a lot of things in a workspace. On my way out through the lobby, I ran into Sandra. She was getting coffee from the front desk station, and she looked up when I came through. She said, "Good luck in Chicago, Claire." I said, "Thank you for listening." She nodded once, the nod of a woman who had done that particular thing exactly as it deserved to be done, and we both went our separate ways. The drive out of Columbus takes you past a stretch of highway where the city drops away fast. 1 minute you're in traffic, the next you're in open, flat farmland with the skyline shrinking in your rearview mirror. I drove through that transition, and I felt the last of it leave my shoulders. Not the job, not the city. The weight of years spent making myself smaller so that someone else's story could stay larger. I turned the radio up. There is a version of this story where I'm angry, where the ending is about confrontation and comeuppance and everything being named out loud in a room full of witnesses. I understand why people want that version. It's satisfying in a very specific, very clean way. But here is what I've learned and what I want you to take with you. The loudest ending is not always the truest one. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply stop. Stop covering. Stop absorbing. Stop making your quiet into someone else's comfort. Pick up your envelope. Leave the room. Drive toward the place that was waiting for you while you were busy looking back. Some rooms aren't meant to hold you. And the moment you stop trying to fit inside them, you realize how much space you actually have.